This is a memo for the third practice test. If you've gotten this far, it means you've done quite a lot of practice. So I'm going to go fairly fast with this. If you find that there's a section that you're still getting wrong since the first test, that there's been no improvement, you need to come speak to me about it so we can look at it together. So this is really just to check the answers. So let's start with the dictionary work. So by now you know that a dictionary definition will have a word, and that word is being defined, the different parts of speech of that word. So in this case, the word is an adjective or a noun. And here in this definition, we're given synonyms. And you'll remember from the last video, antonyms means opposites, synonyms means another word which means the same thing. So that really helps us here with this definition to know that if something is derelict, it can be an adjective, and here's some synonyms, or it can be a noun. And finally, the origin, we see it comes from Latin. So you know by now how to mark this. That would be 2 marks. The origin is Latin. I wonder if you got this. Dereliction is the abstract noun. It's a thing. I'd be very impressed if you got it. Often shin, I-O-N, makes something into an abstract noun. So then you can give yourself a 4 out of 4, and you might have noticed this nice new word, just etymology. So it's another word for origin of a word. It's the fancy academic way of saying it. That's a new word of the day for you if you want to remember it. So now let's have a look. Here are the verbs. There's 4 there. These are all the verbs, and everything before the verb is the subject. So you know this by now, I really hope. You had to highlight everything before the verb before you can get that point. So it's all or nothing there. Everything before the verb. Nothing else should be highlighted or underlined or circled at all. Those are the only things. That's the only way you can get all 8 is if you, so you can't have like you've by mistake underlined that. Then you can't get the full 8 marks. Then checking these verbs. So it was. I'm going to come back to that next one because I made a mistake. Much of the building has, because you could replace that with it, a singular, it has. So it is, and then here it should say there was a spelling mistake, the best parts of the building. So it's a plural, the best parts. So you would say are would be the correct one to get 4. Give yourself a mark out of 12, circle what it is. Let's move on. Here you can check the abstract nouns. Those are the only 4 that you should get for the 4 marks. If you've ticked 5 or more, then you have to minus marks for each extra one that you've ticked. And so to get a maximum of 4 there, then changing these abstract nouns. So faithful, compassionate, joyful, all of those could describe a noun. And then finally, very important that you read these questions properly. So it said underline 2 common nouns. It said circle 3 proper nouns. And it said highlight 3 adjectives. You had to have done those right, and only that number. So you should not have done 3 or more of these. You should not have done 4 or more of these. 4 more of these. So you can just go through and check these. Maybe you had some other ones. You can just come check with me if you're not sure. Otherwise, you can pause and look. So how this would get marked is I would tick the first one that you get right. So for example, shape, that's right. That's a common noun. Surface, common noun. And then if you had rec there, then that's wrong. You shouldn't have any more underlines. There should only be 2 things underlined, etc. So you can just check those and then go on to the next section. So again, you'll give yourself a mark out of 15 in a circle to make it easy to mark, to add up, I mean. Then prepositions. The old man suffered from a heart attack. Either you could say write with pencil, but you should more correct is to say in pencil, or you would say with a pencil. It's about time. The manager didn't take part in and at. I can't think of any other alternatives. This is the only one that could possibly have 2, but in is better there. So again, you're going to give yourself a mark so you can move on to the next section, which is direct and indirect speech. You might have noticed that this is a repeat from one that you had earlier, Just again, real practice. We've done these same ones a few times just to really check that you have corrected the issues that you might have been getting wrong. So hopefully these are really improving. So again, you can just go check the marks, or you can even go check over in your last one. So you're going to tick every time there's something right. If he believed in ghosts, that's 3, and you'll continue along that they had previous day, that's 4, where she had been the day before, or you could have said the previous day. So you're going to give a tick every time something's right, and then that's going to be a mark. That she had on that wall, I hope that's a tricky one, that she liked to eat carrots every day. So then you'd add up all your marks. So that's, I think, 4 and 3. So then you'll add up. That's 3 plus 4 is 7, plus 3 is 10, 14, 17. And then you'll add up all your marks to get a mark. So that's just a 17 plus your marks for this one. And then you'll divide them by 2 to get a mark out of 14. So I saw a bunch of people not doing that. You must make sure you do that. And then just a note for this one, you could have had the he said thing at the beginning. It didn't have to go at the end, but just a reminder about all the punctuation. Oh, look, I left one out there. All the punctuation that has to be at the end of sentences, where there's commas and that there's no colons after said in English, in direct speech. And oh, by the way, there's still that same mistake in this one from the last one. So she should say, what will we have for supper that evening? If you're not getting 100% for definitions, there's a problem. So I hope you are from now on. So you need to know that an idiom is a saying, which doesn't make literal sense, but it's understood. That's the key thing. So it's a saying, yes, that everyone understands because it gets used a lot, commonly used. And then a proverb is a saying, which gives advice or tells an obvious truth. These are just definitions you have to learn off by heart. I don't want to see anyone getting these wrong. Okay, then the idiom break a leg just means good luck. Again, so that's just general knowledge. Like, do you know that idiomatic expression to mean good luck? It sounds really funny. Literally, you don't mean go break a leg. Just from over time, we've agreed from lots of people using it that that's what that saying means. Down in the dumps is an idiom. It just means you're feeling sad. There's no lesson that you can learn from that. So now this one said, highlight the proverbs and underline the idioms. And you might have noticed it was out of 6. So cool as a watermelon might sound like an idiom if you don't know English so well, but it's not really the saying that we all know. We all know it's cool as a cucumber. So fit as a fiddle is like a violin. So we don't know why that just means someone's very fit, or if someone's a pain in the neck, they're irritating, or if they're like a bull in a china shop, then they just very clumsy and destroy things, or it can be that they behave very badly and cause problems. And then these ones also, it's no use crying over spilled milk means once the milk has been spilt, there's nothing you can do, or once something bad's happened, you shouldn't cry over it, you should try to solve it. A bird in the hand is worth 2 in the bush is another proverb. It means literally if you have 1 chicken in your hand that you've caught, it's more valuable than 2 that are out there in the bushes that you haven't caught. Or something that you have is more valuable than something you don't, that there might be more of, but if you don't have it, it's not of value to you. And finally, don't put all your eggs in one basket means don't invest everything in one place. Have a bit of put different investments, or invest your time or your energy into different places, not just all in one place. So those were those 6 marks. You might have noticed that in this test, figures of speech are all together rather than divided up separately, and that is more than often than not what's going to happen. You'll have to look at a poem or something with lots of figures of speech in it. First thing is, if you don't know your definitions, then there's a big problem. You need to learn them off by heart. So these are all just straight definitions. So metaphor and similes have to have the word comparison. One has like or as, the other doesn't, and you have to say which. Personification is giving human qualities to a non-human. These are just straight definition. Alliteration and assonance are both repetition, and they're repetition of sounds that's very specific. You can't just say repetition of letters, sounds. Then alliteration is a consonant sound, and assonance is a vowel sound repeated. So very, very important, that word repetition, that word sound. I've highlighted some examples of alliteration here. You might have something different, but the main one I saw was the b sound. So the b, 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 b. And you might have noticed that there can be lots of words in between, but it's still alliteration. Even though there's words in between the b words, it still counts. Then here it says, quote an example. Quote means you copy it exactly with quotation marks. So you couldn't get full marks for that. You couldn't get the full one unless there were quote marks. They must switch him on their way out. So this poem is really speaking about a dog and what a noise it makes. So the poem tells us that the dog is barking the same high rhythmic bark that he barks every time they leave the house. They must switch him on their way out. So there's our metaphor. And they're comparing the dog to something. What would they switch on? A radio, a toy, a robot, something that has power that can be switched on as they leave. So that's what's being compared there. So this question said, what's being compared and why? So the dog's being compared to a machine that can be switched on. That's the one mark where you say this is compared to this. And then why? The dog doesn't stop. It's like a machine. It's very annoying. Something along those lines to explain it. Then the title of the poem is a joke. So the title of the poem is The Reason I Don't Get a Gun. Or should I say another reason why I don't keep a gun in the house. So it's funny. He hasn't said anything about shooting, but the idea is that he has a temper, and if he hears that dog continually barking, he's worried to have a gun, because he will shoot that dog out of frustration. So he's making a joke. So that's, even though he doesn't say anything about shooting, the title implies that. It gives us a hint. And he's trying to be humorous, or it's a joke. Then this poem, In Spite of Everything, the Stars. And here this poem is filled with similes, metaphors, personification. They are like a stand basket, like a basket of fresh milk. So then there's all these other comparisons, like a conductor's expectant arm, or a juggler's plates, or 100 fast balls. So all of these different comparisons are in there. But then we also see that these stars come out and they startle the sky. So you get startled, you get shocked. Hear the stars, surprise the sky. So there's all these different examples of how the stars are compared to other things to make us have an image of them, which is what similes and metaphors are. And then also the sky and the stars are treated like people to again create an image, strong imagery for us, and make the poem have a stronger effect or impact. So I just showed you there were quite a few examples that you could quote. So here's the one I chose, like a stunned piano. The sky is being compared to a stunned piano. That's really basic. The third mark for that, which would be harder, would be why. And you want to explain what effect that has. Again, if you don't have quotation marks there, you can't get the mark. You can only get half. And then personification, the same thing. So this is the harder kind of question you'll get. Quote an example and then explain its effect. So again, you had to have your quote marks to be able to get that tick. And then the effect is you want to say what is the human quality being given. So the stars surprise the sky. The stars are being given the human quality of being able to surprise the sky. So that's the one mark. Or you could say the sky is being given the human quality of being surprised, one mark. And then the other is the stars come out so quickly that it's as if it surprises the sky. That's the point of that personification there. So another word for effect is the point. What image does it try to create? That's what a question's asking when it asks about its effect. It's asking, what does the figure of speech do? Does it compare? Does it give a human quality? Does it repeat a sound? And why? what image, how does this make the poem better and have a bigger impact, become a stronger, better poem for the audience. Once you've added up all those figures of speech marks, you can come check these. So this is how you're going to mark these. You're going to start by, you get a tick for every one that's incorrect. So it said circle the spelling error. So for each circle, you get a tick. And for each correct spelling, you get a tick. So there's 14 marks. That means there's 7 incorrect things. So if there are 8 circles, then you got to minus a mark for each extra circle. So there should be 8 possibility for 7 ticks, and for 7 ticks for circles, and for 7 ticks for corrections. That makes the 14. Any other things, so just say you circled approximately because you knew that was on our spelling list, then you minus a mark if that's an extra one. So be careful to check how many there are and always be sure you're doing the right amount, the right number, I should say. These words need to be used in proper sentences for 2 marks each, and you know the important thing by now that it needs to be a full sentence showing an understanding of the word, not a definition, and it needs to have correct punctuation and spelling. Then you can get your 2 ticks for each one to make up the 6 marks. Finally, the punctuation, so you can just check all the punctuation corrections over here, add up how many ticks you get, and then divide it by 2 to get a mark out of 10. And then you add up this whole section on spelling and punctuation, totals to 30, so you can give yourself a mark there, and then add up all your marks to give yourself a mark out of 105. And then finally, you're going to fill in that form one last time to show me your marks for test 3. So here's where you go, the bit.ly link, and fill in one more time your marks so that I can see your improvement. And be sure to come speak to me if there's an area you weren't sure of in this test.